I was struggling to have consistent results with Claude. I'm not saying good results. Like sometimes it blew my mind, but a lot of the times I just wanted to throw the machine out the window.
Hey everybody, welcome to CTO Confidential. I am here with Adam Creeger, who is the CTO as of, I think today, of Slate, and also the creator of Illume, an awesome library, and I would say it's in the AI LLM orchestration kind of space, right? That's like an orchestration tool for working with JIRA and Linear. If you guys work with those tools, it's really cool. Adam, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here. And yeah, I joined Slate about a week and a half ago. So, but it was announced on LinkedIn today. So I think it's really today, I guess.
Yeah, it's pretty. What does Slate do actually? That's probably a good place to start.
Yeah, Slate creates tooling for creatives in the social media space.
Awesome.
So social media teams that are pumping out a lot of content. And obviously the social media space is pretty mature now, but the big shift that's happening is that it used to be social media managers would be very much like kind of hands off when it came to creating the content, and other like influencers would do it, or like other people would make the content. But now like those social media managers are often the content creators themselves. They might in fact be influencers, and they're pumping out a lot of video. And once you start pumping out a lot of video, you basically start behaving like a media company, and media companies have a bunch of infrastructure and requirements they need around like the video production process that no one's really catering for. And Slate got its start in sports, and back then sports social media teams were very sophisticated for the time, and now the rest of the industry is kind of catching up. Right. And so Slate had this advantage where we were kind of ahead of the game. And, now not only are so many people creating content, brands creating content, but obviously like AI is just also changing everything. So there's two big shifts like coming together, which is honestly actually the reason I joined Slate, because it's such an interesting time to join that kind of company.
Well, I was going to say you also worked at Meta, so like it kind of comes full circle for you. So you were on the inside, and now you're in because that I would say Meta is basically like social media. Like, I mean, they're like the J.P. Morgan Chase of social media, right? Like you have to have your Meta. It's like there's a handful of like key players, right? It's Meta, Instagram, LinkedIn, X, YouTube. TikTok now, maybe TikTok.
Oh yeah, TikTok now for sure.
TikTok, yeah. I'm not as big on it.
I can say that now. I'm not a Meta.
Yeah, right. TikTok is huge. It's interesting that it and then there's also like the Threads thing, and there's Blue Sky, and I have kind of put a hard line on Threads and Blue Sky. Basically any new social media. TikTok forward, I'm just for my life I'm like I'm not joining any of the new ones. I'm like
this is when you transition into a boomer. You're like, no, it's new. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing
Going back. Just Reddit. Like, that's it. I'm just doing Reddit now.
But even Reddit has now come back to be, like, in my opinion, one of the most important like websites on the internet. Like,
it really has.
Like, it's the source of all the LLMs. Like, it's so interesting how it was super relevant, and then social media really, like, the giants of like Meta and all the other social media sites kind of like made Reddit less relevant, and then suddenly it's now become like a powerhouse again.
Incredibly relevant.
But still very addictive.
I have not, it's interesting. Every time I go on Reddit, I like it, but I don't find myself checking it regularly, and I'm not really sure why. I find if I search things, and then that like brings me to Reddit. But then I've never just engaged it and enjoyed it, and maybe I have to give it a shot.
No, I think I'd stay in that state if you like your sanity. To me, that's the reason it's classic is it's the notifications. Like if you install the app and turn those notifications on,
you're done.
It's game over.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's I turn all
it's
notifications off. This is one
there you
thing
go.
I've always stuck to with my phone is kind of keeping away because now I do feel like the idea of the social media presence, like I've started the podcast because of my business, it's almost necessary. I feel like it's the new resume differentiator. And I think a lot of folks are like seeing what we've done for my business and they're like, hey, like how do and I said, well, we didn't do this overnight. First of all, we've been doing this silently for 4 years with almost nobody watching the channel. And then
Right.
basically in the last 2 months, we like grew to 100,000 followers on YouTube, like out of nowhere, but filming every single day. And it was it's crazy how you have to do that to really like, and you think
It's
you're going to run out of stuff to talk about, but you don't.
you don't know. No, that's me. But it's funny you're saying like you're creating a lot of content, a lot of video content for social media, which is exactly what
Exactly right.
exactly why Slate is in such a great position.
And it's,
Not to
it's
bring it
so,
full circle, but
well, and the other thing that's pretty cool is now I'm getting people that ask me like, and my local like nursery school was like, even though I'm a developer, I build applications. For some reason, they think I'm like a social media like
yeah,
mastermind, and they're like, "Do you want to?" And I'm like, "Am I gonna like people need help managing this stuff?" And it is the kind of thing that I could do, especially with the help of a tool like Slate or these different tools that you can do. And a lot of people just don't realize it's out there. They think you're like hand posting this stuff every
yeah.
day, and I'm like, no, I have like crazy automations running that that keep this
Yeah, I was
stuff
gonna
helping
say
out.
you should be like, I'll help you. I'll help you with your social media, and like that, you just like introduce them to your open claw. And you're like, hi, meet my claw. Yeah, it's gonna do some weird things, and it will completely forget about you at times, and just behave strangely 50% of the time. But also, it'll blow your mind. So yeah, enjoy.
It's pretty incredible. Have you been a big OpenClaw user?
I'm not a big open claw user. I definitely have played around with it. I have one. I didn't go down the Mac Mini route.
Hmm.
Although I do now have a Mac Mini, but that's actually more for persistent, long running Claude Code sessions. And now they've got co-work dispatch, like those kind of things. That because having a laptop is always like I never know whether it's actually powered off or not.
Yeah,
And so I do. I am a fan of like a persistent, always on Mac Mini esque machine that I can use for this. But OpenClaw itself, it struck me as like very interesting, almost like very simple, and its brilliance was that it was simple. It was just an agent with like a heartbeat, right,
right.
and a permanent dangerously skip permissions, um, and I think that really unlocked a lot of people's imagination, and obviously kind of caught fire. And I found it at first difficult to use and set up. I remember, it was like using Linux like many years ago.
Yeah,
Just everything required infinite tweaking, but eventually I got it to a decent place. But it's just unreliable, like and expensive. I didn't want to use my Anthropic subscription with it. I know
mm,
Anthropic are aggressively, I get it. I get why they're doing that. I think the business model makes a lot of sense. I have no problem with it. So I didn't want to use my Max subscription. So I started paying for API usage on Sonnet and Opus, and that lasted about 15 minutes and $100. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm like, no, I need to do something else. So,
absolutely.
and I
It,
never got
it
it nailed it
that
down.
that is true.
So,
This reminds me of like when I started agentic coding. I want to say it was like the beginning of last year is when it became more viable in my mind. I want to say not last year, but the year before. I had seen Cursor and I was like, I'm still writing by hand largely. And then I kind of made this switch and I was using Zed and I was using a token and I had spent like $1,000 in 1 month and I was like, I'm going to go to the max plan. That was like what made me jump to Claude Code and like brought me down to the $200. But like you said, it was very easy to hit $1,000. And I was like, okay,
my
that's not
my
me.
my my Claude Code usage, God, you almost want to make me bring up a terminal and just see what my Claude Code usage is. Hold on a second.
Yeah, that's good
'Cause-
because you are hitting us because I have a very hard time getting anywhere near the max of the max plan. Like I go nowhere
oh
near it.
yeah, like I can hit that pretty regularly now. Um, let's just see how that goes. Um, Okay. It's not terrible. So far, it's $1,600 worth this month. So, like, that's not too bad.
That's
I've,
not
I've
terrible.
definitely, like, I definitely average of actual, that's to be clear, that's not money I'm actually spending. That's the dollar equivalent of the tokens that I'm spending on the max plan.
Right, if
Um,
you would use
if I'd
the
actually use
token
the
amount.
API. Yeah. So, but usually that number hits about 2,000 to $2,500 a month. And that's all I think where that max 20 plan probably like starts to max out for people.
Become
But
very,
yeah,
very worth it.
since I've started using swarms and agent teams,
Okay, I
which
have not
is
gotten that into that. Yeah.
right, yeah, that's what and Illume. Illume made it. I was about to build my own agent team implementation based on beads,
Okay.
um, and when agent teams came out, I was like, oh, I'm just going to like just try this. And in fact, what I did was I used agent teams like hand rolling it essentially, but like hand rolling a Claude Code native agent team to build my own implementation of agent teams that was going to use beads. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So like I
Okay.
built the thing I was going to build with its replacement, and my logic was, and it's twisted logic. I just wanted to really try it. My logic was, let's see if it does a good enough job, then I don't need to actually like spend much time building it myself. I don't spend any time building it myself. If it doesn't do a good enough job, then I'll need to invest it. So it's really a lose-lose situation. Like, because if it
Yeah,
works
yeah.
well, then I don't need the thing it just built. And if it didn't work well, then I have to build the thing I just tried to build. But it actually worked reasonably well, and I'm glad I did it because it gave me the confidence to just to move forward with agent teams core, despite there's some quirks and bugs, and it seems a bit inefficient, but it was good enough. And actually, it saved me writing an absolutely like a load of code, and I didn't depend on like beads, which people love beads. I'm not nothing wrong with beads, but it's just good not to have another dependency in the mix.
That's
So
it's interesting. I found that myself that like sometimes I kind of pause and I saw a great post today. Someone said I'm a recovering front end developer, so I used to have to change frameworks every week, and I thought that was such a great line because
it's so
I was thinking the same thing where I almost stop and I go I see a new concept like Ralph loops and I'm like I was like I'm not gonna do anything yet because then suddenly Claude Code just kind of implements it and I'm like great. Everybody went, they dog food that, they determined it was great. Or
yeah,
just put it into Claude Code, and now I don't have to. Now I don't have to like go and build this thing out myself. So sometimes it's good to almost be a little slower. Just tell like
yeah,
people, I was like, you don't have to try every new thing as soon as it comes out. You're already moving at the speed of light, or in some sense. But I always tell people, the hardest part is building something useful. So I built a bunch of apps this year. I've been releasing open source little SaaS things. I have not had my open claw moment yet. So it's really just allowing me to be like, okay, time to move on, and I'm going to move on, and I'm because my
yeah.
assumption is when I hit the thing, then a lot of people will do it, and I'll know, okay, now I'm going to invest all my time into this. So maybe that's like the advantage. But I'm curious what the swarm patterning you're using is do you have like different agents that take on different roles? Because for me
No,
the okay that all right, yeah, how are you
sorry,
doing
you
it?
carry on. I interrupted you.
No,
What were
well
you going
I'll
to
tell
say?
you my I'll tell you where I get stuck is it's making it much faster for me to generate the code, but my testing time goes way because I still feel like it's not even just that it tests and there's necessarily a break, but I always am like the UX on that's a little weird, and I'm like things that the agent wouldn't catch even if I had an agent to do it. So I'm curious where the swarm
Okay,
is helping you.
man, let's go down this rabbit hole. So, something that really stuck with me is there's a guy called Dexter Hawthey. I've actually never said his last name out loud, isn't it? So Dexter Hawthey. I think that. Sorry, Dexter, if that's not how you pronounce your last name. Um, he actually did a presentation a while ago when like sub agents came out, and I think that um, his line was like sub agents aren't about playing house, right? They're about context isolation. And that really resonated with me because I felt like there were other things that could do the playing house, like skills came out around the same time.
Hmm.
There was this period where Anthropic just like launched about 5 different concepts that all seemed similar to each other and didn't like
Yeah.
explain any of them.
Yep. Yep.
And I I remember seeing like Dexter's like, I don't know, presentation about this, and I was like, yeah, they're not for playing house. Now I would have made a house MD joke,
Hmm.
Markdown, house MD. And so I never went down the path of like trying to come up with the front end designer, the back end designer, the back end, front end developer, the back end developer. You know, I
I
I
skipped all
never,
that too. Yeah,
yeah, I
you
never
are
went
a
down that path.
master front end
Yeah,
engineer. That all? Yeah, I never did any of
it feels
that.
like that feels like almost one step removed from make no mistakes. Like it doesn't, it didn't feel super valuable to me. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying I never saw the value and I maybe skipped something. But what I did see the value in subagents was around context isolation, because the thing that at that time, this was towards like maybe September, a little bit around that September-ish last year, the thing that was really killing me was context rot. And like I was struggling to have consistent results with Claude. I'm not saying good results. Like sometimes it blew my mind, but a lot of the times I just wanted to throw the machine out the window. It reminded me of that time when when Wi-Fi first came to planes. The
Hmm.
first 3 times like you traveled with Wi-Fi, you were just like, "This is the amazing. It's the future. Like this is going to be. God, I can't believe this. We are at this point in technology, right?" And then the fourth time, you flew on a plane and there was no Wi-Fi, and you're like, what the hell? What is this airline? How can they even run a business without Wi-Fi on a? And the same thing is the Claude Code, right? The first few times you use it, it blows your mind. Then one time, because LLMs, like not deterministic, it goes down a completely different path, right? And all the probabilities add up to take you down this random path you weren't expecting, and your context was really quite poor because the prompt was poor,
Hmm.
because we're humans, and yeah, and it does this thing, and you're like, I can't believe what a terrible. Oh my! You want to throw throw
Yeah.
your machine out the window, and it hits you with a "you're absolutely right," which makes everything much worse. So back then, context rot was like probably one of the biggest cause of that. And so when I heard about subagents, I went deep into how to really like give subagents roles and different purposes, but use that in conjunction with this context isolation concept. And so my approach to swarms is actually based on that, and it's
Okay.
that but zoomed out. So to come back to your actual question, the whenever everything I do has the same workflow. I am a big believer in making everything incredibly predictable. When it comes to like feature dev or debugging, like stuff, not everything you do when you're building software, but the 90%, like building features and debugging them, right? There's a bunch of other
Hmm.
stuff that's ad hoc, and I don't think about that. But I want the very strict workflow, right? And that workflow is still flexible, right? Based on the complexity of what you're doing, but like it should do some analysis. It should do like some planning based on that. It should do some um, do implementation, like code review, like other verification steps. All that workflow works really well and gets very good predictable results. It insulates you from a lot of the Opus. Like remember when everyone was saying Opus was nerfed? Maybe you didn't because you weren't on Reddit, but Reddit had this big thing of the Claude Code subreddit was always like, oh my god, Opus is nerfed. And I ended up doing a post on Reddit saying, before you say Opus is nerfed, like please try these things.
Right.
And
Right.
I wasn't saying that Opus wasn't nerfed. I wasn't making that claim. I wasn't claiming that something was going on. I'm just saying, like, by doing a bunch of best practices, you can insulate yourself from that effect, right? So I did all those things. The post was quite controversial, which was great, but I've been following that like workflow process like for a while. But when swarms came along, what enabled me to do was just like have swarms of these workflows,
Hmm.
right? So the theory is like if I was doing a single task and getting good results with one, I could basically break down much larger, like large, huge tasks and use the same like disciplined approach. to
Right.
execute like massive, like much more complicated things in pretty in not it's not crazy fast because it's rigorous and
Hmm.
it's not cheap either. It's not token efficient. I think it is in the long run because you don't repeat a lot of the work, but you do end up two things. If you use Illume to do these swarms, you'll end up with two things. One is like a better end result because of all the actual workflows that happen within each of the agents on the team,
Hmm.
right? And also like there's check-ins and there's tops drifting away from the specs and all that stuff. And the other one is that you end up with a really clear understanding of exactly what happened at what time, because that's what Illume does as well. It makes it really clear what the agent was thinking as it was analyzing, planning, and implementing, right?
Right.
And that is such an important gap. I built that for myself, but it turns out that's one of the most important problems to solve when AI is used at companies or larger companies or on teams. Like
Hmm.
it's not the code that's the problem, like it's the lack of insight into exactly why the agent did what it did and what assumptions it had, what risks it knew about, what decisions it made, and what insights it had. Like when you know that stuff, you have a lot more confidence. Either way, you're like,
Right.
okay, you just came up with a crazy assumption. I know you're going to do this wrong, so I'm just going to stop you right now and like correct you, right? Or like, yes, you have correctly spotted four of these risks. I am not going to read through every line of code because if you know what the agent's thinking, these agents are incredibly good at writing code,
Hmm.
and they're just non-deterministic in the conclusions they reach and like the
Yes.
insights they have. So yeah, I think that I've I've accidentally created this tool that allows you to do a lot more at scale in a really thorough way. But it's slower, I think, than like a lot of people are used to when they're just like make no
Yeah.
mistakes,
Yeah.
Claude, go do it, right? But like it does leave you with an end result that's better and a an audit trail where your colleagues or even your future self can understand what the agent did and most importantly why it did it.
And
Um,
it talks back and forth to your project management tool, which I like too, because if you're using that, that is like a very key component, I think, especially if you have like a lot of people on a team working
yeah,
together. And that's, yeah.
and especially when you have teams of agents where
Yeah.
the agents can look at each other issues for each other's it's the same source. There's something that did blow my mind a little bit when AI and agentic coding came out is that for years software engineers in theory have like had issue trackers, right? Like JIRA. No one, everyone loves to hate on JIRA, but it really is done a lot for the industry. But obviously, there's GitHub issues, like Linear.
Hmm.
There's it's a lot. There's many of these tools, but um,
Monday, there's a flavor of the month or of the
yeah,
year. They seem to come.
Linear feels to be the one right now.
Yeah.
But
That's
but
the it's fancy Jira. That's it's like Jira with
fancy
dark mode or something. Yes.
Jira with dark mode. Yeah, they just changed. Yeah, I'm not even going to go there. I think there's so much linear love out there that I don't want to possibly poke at that hornet's nest. It's like criticizing Taylor Swift, like a middle school. That doesn't sound like a good idea. But the I've forgotten where I was going with this. But yes, we all like engineers use these tools, and then the minute agentic coding came out, everyone forgot about them and like was like, oh, where do I put context? Where do I like store like this plan? Where do I put the plan? I know I'll put it in a markdown file, and then I'm going to let these markdown files litter up my whole repo, and so that now I have to clean them up because now I can't find any of them, and it's kind of like yeah, they become so plentiful that they're useless, right? Um, but like the obvious place for all this information is the issue.
Yeah.
Like it's
The issue
all
tracker. Yeah.
really it's not only the right place for the information just semantically, it's the sure there's a bit of network latency as you're reading and writing this stuff, which
Hmm.
it might matter if you're gas towning because gas town operates at an insane scale, right? But for a
Yep.
lot of
Yep.
people, they're not. They're running a few agents at a time. I mean, one agent at a time, and already moving 20 times faster than before. So what's a few extra milliseconds? Um, and like the content ends up exactly where they know how to find it again. If there's any one downside to having an issue tracker instead of a markdown file, it's that it's slightly less discoverable by the agent, unless the agent knows to go and search through GitHub or search through JIRA or Linear. And it is perhaps harder to like index and stick in a database, so you like generate the embeds and stick it and do rag on it at some point or something. That's harder, but it's not, those problems are very solvable.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like once things get into the comments and that, and you're going back and forth and decisions are being made, it is interesting though, like, because I do try and keep the one thing that LLMs have helped me with is keeping the README and the documentation up to date in the repo.
So easy.
Because I never did that. I never wrote the documentation before.
Yeah.
I was always like, no. Great code is so readable. We don't need the docs. I was one of those adherents. And I think that we deluded ourselves into this. And now that we have agents, we're like, actually, great code is good, and the doc, and the
doc's great, and everything's great. And actually, that brings me on to another thing about LLMs, which enables you to do certain things. It enables you to do certain things much better than ever before because it's so much easier. And those things have always been important, like writing unit tests, for example.
Yeah.
Like every so often I'll see a comment about like how Claude writes rubbish unit tests. I'm like, you on crack, like Claude.
They're
if
great.
You've got the right, yeah, it's awesome. Like
you have to watch it. There's definitely like but people do this too, so it's not a Claude problem. Where one of my biggest is like the mock. Sometimes people mock a test so well that it never fails, and I'm always like, well. It's
not testing anything.
It's not testing anything. Exactly. But that's a very common thing that I've seen any developer do. But I do one of my Claude.md standards is I need you to follow a TDD flow, and I want you to write the tests first and have them fail and pass. And I found that to be a really, really good flow.
Yeah, that's exactly how I work, and I work like that as a human. And by the way, nothing was more satisfying. Than seeing that red bar go green, like when you had written a whole suite of failing tests. Oh my god, that was like crack. But my pet peeve that I've seen is that Claude will sometimes do things like actually write to the disk. It will break out of it will accidentally write an integration test.
Yeah.
And like I can't remember exactly what it was with Illume, a whole test suite. Illume is very well tested because of it's all of the workflow, the TDD Claude.md, right? At some point, it was actually executing the CLI during unit tests. And then another more recent one is like I added some like very anonymous telemetry just so I can understand like how many people are using the thing. Because my wife was like, "You're spending your whole life building this thing. Who's using it?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't actually know." But people are using it, which is nice. But like I added telemetry, and it turned out it was actually calling the telemetry like API, post-hoc API in unit tests.
Man.
And I'm like, oh wow, I've got like 5,000 unique users in one day. And I'm like, yeah, no, wait, that's not right.
It definitely it's very, very interesting because it's this was one of the things I had noticed because now I've got a bunch of experience doing a bunch of Next.js kind of apps, and now I've done at least 9 Ruby on Rails apps this year. And one of the things that pushed me towards Rails was that I found that the Node community, TypeScript community, we're very into like picking little tools and like letting you build things the way you want. And I wanted a little more convention. And so it does less of that in the Rails code because it's just learned on more of the conventions. Whereas sometimes I would notice that if I gave it some like vtest and like a Next.js repo, it would really start to like, I remember, like you said, not unit test. I would start to get into this, like, wait a minute, what are you doing now? Like, and I'm like, these are never going to run. They're going to take forever to run. And so I really had to give it conventions where I was like, I'd have to say things like, you're going to use pure functions, and I need you to use a reducer anytime you've called use state more than 3 times. I need you to move it to a reducer and like test and unit. Like I would do these patterns. And I really had to watch it because even just recently I did something. I go, wait a minute, you just use state like it literally like 9 times. It's like use state. I was like, we need to clean that whole situation up.
Yeah, you should build. Next step there is like build a lint rule that prevents that stuff. Because that's like that. I've absolutely done that. And so that testing thing is so funny you mentioned that, because when I think one of the first couple of projects I wrote, there was like, it laid out like three different they were like it used three different test file layouts in one project. It was like underscore tests. There was like then another tests folder, and then like the test file was right next to the actual like, class or the code. And I'm like, and then sometimes, then I would like, oh, how do I run unit tests? Oh, I run the test int command. It's like, really? Like, what was it? Oh, it's like, oh my God, we got to fix this stuff. So yeah, I've definitely experienced that, where the flexibility of a framework works against you when you're using like an agent that has suddenly so much agency. On how to do things,
or a swarm, even, and two agents, three agents might pick different patterns at this, like that type of coordination. So that was where I started to really. That's why I was like, I always say, like, to my team, I was like, I saw the value in the convention over configuration even more so, because I was like, you're not actually going to sit down with your team and decide, like, with so sometimes that didn't matter as much, because we would sit down and we'd say, this is what we're going to use. 2-3 agents would pick different things and different patterns, and so you were like, okay, I need to kind of rein this in. So it's very interesting how you become more of a manager. I think that's one of the biggest things that people struggle with is you become sort of the tech lead now that has to make the call, when maybe you were an individual contributor before and you didn't necessarily need to make those calls.
Yeah, what's funny though is I laugh because Claude Code helped me become much less of a manager. Before Claude Code, I was like engineering leader. I don't know what that really means, but like I was somewhat out of the code, just because to really like do a good job coding, you can't just dip in for half an hour. Well, now you can, but like you couldn't just dip in for half an hour. Now you had to like give it several hours. And if I'm at a company as a manager of people, there's probably a bunch of other things I need to be doing, right? Rather than code, than sort of spending those several hours. And I always did it every so often, because it's important to stay in touch with the code base and never forget the roots of what it means to be a developer on a particular code base or in a workflow. It's like the CEO that visits the shop floor, right? Not that I was a CEO or my folks were on shop floors, but it's important to stay in touch. So I did it occasionally, but it was rare. And I still always loved it, but I didn't get the chance to do it. And then when Claude Code came along, it was like, everything. Oh my God, it was, and then
that's
ironically,
the same for us.
I lost all work-life balance.
That's the next thing, and we could talk about that, because now you're running swarms, and I saw like Mitchell Hashimoto, I think, just put this out where he goes, before I leave the house, I make sure there's always an agent running. Like this is his life, and I'm sitting here thinking, I could think of nothing worse in my life than that. Like, and I like we talked about, I've gotten caught at the dinner table trying to like remotely manage Claude, and of course, like, wife looks at me and I'm like, I'm not on Instagram, I'm working, and like and then you're like, okay, this is, I think someone's post was like, I'm reaching new lows of like ignoring my family because of Claude Code, and I think that's a real thing.
Yeah, I wonder how long until like Bruce Cherney is like cited in a divorce like case.
Just
like, who is this Bruce guy? But yeah, no, is Bruce real? Maybe he's just a bot that sits on Twitter and threads and fixes bug requests on demand. But
I say, like, it's very interesting, because I'm not like as a CTO, it's like I'm not like a lover of technology in my general life. For example, I went to the gym today. I'm climbing. And I say, why is everybody filming themselves? Like, like for me, I like leave my phone in the bag. I don't want to look at it.
That's very different. Yeah,
it's such a, or like the fitness. Everyone's like, oh, you don't got a fitness tracker? You don't track your, I go, no, I don't track any of that. I was like, and I'm like, I don't get into that.
Do you track your sleep? Do you track your sleep?
I don't do any.
If there's one thing I'll do, is track your sleep. It's such an important part. It's like sometimes just some innovations are just good. Right, and the ability to understand your sleep and understand what helps you sleep better and makes you sleep worse, and like you understand the impact of like, oh, if you have a drink before bed, right, just one,
One, it
what to
changes.
do to your sleep. You're like, once you see that, you're like, holy crap.
Wow,
Um,
wow.
you
Or
know,
maybe
and
you
it,
don't want to know that, but maybe I've loved the Whoop because there's no screen. You know, like for me, like I just wear a regular watch because I said I was like I like being able to look and just see the time, and that's because
I
that's
don't, yeah,
that's it. I just want to see the time. That's
I
it.
don't, yeah.
And but I go, I don't want my messages. I don't because again, it's just too addictive to me. Like I like especially if I'm in the gym or if I go hiking or something, I miss the time. Like there used to be a time when you'd go hiking and your phone would lose service, and now you never lose service no matter, like even if you're like deep in the woods, it doesn't matter, like you have service everywhere, and
What
it's
network are you on? I
changed.
don't know if you're.
For
I go to a music
really,
festival in Atlanta, and I'm like done. Like no
really, oh no,
service.
Verizon is like I have to, I don't want to make this an ad for Verizon, but I
Oh, so
truly
I'll
there.
do the counter ad because I'm also on Verizon. So there, you do one ad,
Wow,
and I'll do the other one.
maybe I got to move to Atlanta. No, no, there are times
Don't move
like
to
when I
Atlanta.
was in Utah, I went to Utah with my wife. We definitely like lost service there, and it's so funny because I had to revert back to like using a paper map and like using the odometer to see how far we had driven into a spot, and like I was very comfortable with that, and I'm thinking my kids are never going to be able to do this because they're going
Never
to be
gonna
like,
be
wait,
able to do that.
I
You just
I'm on the precipice. Like when I started driving, we used maps, and that was how we
yeah,
found our
just
way
like
around.
well, we're gonna sound really old now, but like yeah, just like printing. I mean, I lived in the UK, and we used Autoroute, I think, and then Google Maps, and in the US, I think MapQuest was the thing
MapQuest was the
that
thing.
everyone used. Um, and so like yes, I do miss those, but also much less safe. Like having CarPlay,
Oh,
like
oh
with
yeah, it was
GPS,
definitely less.
like much better.
But it's definitely more nerve wracking when the car, like when those things cut out on us and we're sort of like left, and you sort of have to think through. And I bring up, we were in Utah in the Grand Staircase, and we were looking for this slot canyon to go hiking, and we're driving down this road, and it said that if it was like a dirt road, and it said not to go on it if you didn't have four-wheel drive. I had like a rental, like a Chevy Cobalt, and I said, nah, it's dry enough, we'll be
It's
fine,
fine.
right?
It's all right.
Fine. And so we're like driving, and the service just cuts out, so I can't really see on the map where we are to get to this like pin. And so in the post though, it was just so interesting that I had like naturally looked at the odometer when we started, and I was like, well, it says that it's
Wow.
38 miles in, and we've gone 25, and like once we hit 38, I go, it has to be to the left. And sure enough, at like exactly the 38-mile mark, I looked left, and I just like turned the car left, and then suddenly I started seeing other cars that had gone, that had appeared, and I was like, man, had I not had that instinct to like mark the odometer in my mind when I entered, because we did end up losing service, I was like, how many people come out here and are just like, what did we just do? Because I saw a
Yeah.
blog post and the service cut out. So I think about that even with like coding. I think yesterday, right? Claude just started having trouble, and I'm like, I just don't want to stop. I like, can I just finish what I'm doing here? And I just was like, well, I'll just finish what I'm doing. How many people now
Well,
are like,
you went into the code. You're
went
like,
into the code, I opened it up, but I find myself, it's, you're so rusty, some like I do
oh man,
feel the, like I haven't done this in a long time
yeah,
happening.
yeah. I just opened up Codex.
Yeah, you switch
And I'm
to
like,
something else. It's true that, you know what, I have this little thing that I built called Code Dojo, and I do it every day to make sure that I'm still writing code daily, and it's just problems like leak code kind of problems, build a
yeah.
class, do this, and but I definitely feel the rustiness, and there are some days that I'll miss, and I can feel that kind of creeping in if I don't keep it going. And I'm like, I don't know when I'm going to need this. Maybe I won't need it, but maybe we will, in the sense that, you know, I always think about like, what if Anthropic just was like, actually, we have to start charging you the right amount for everything. And
Please
I'd be
don't.
like,
Please don't.
I don't want to put that out into the world, but
Don't put
I'm
that
like,
out in the world.
would I go back to like haiku, but actually handwrite some code? Like I would say like, hey, I'm going to use like a very low powered model to save cost, and I'll like write pseudocode and have like Claude correct it. Like, would I go to a
Mm,
method that was fast but cheaper, but maybe it's not 100x fast, like using swarms of agents, but maybe I'm just like happy with 5x fast.
yeah, maybe. I mean, God, if Anthropic got rid of their subsidy, and by the way, one of my pet peeves of the community is people who don't realize how good they have it with the subscriptions. Like, I talk about, but anyway, I think if Anthropic got rid of their subsidy, I think I'd probably sell my house before I use Haiku on a daily basis. Like I think I would I would like remortgage my house, sell my cars. Kids, no, you can't go to school you want to go to.
Yeah. I would probably
Bruce needs my money.
Yeah. Oh my God. Oh my God. I would think to myself a little bit more like I actually have to try and think of. I would put more. Sometimes I think people. You see everybody launching these apps now, and I'm like, well, maybe we have to put some effort into thinking of actually good ideas. Like sometimes I see things and I'm like, is that even like that was a cool little thing, but did that need to exist? And I think that we're going to see a lot of that. We probably see a huge amount of SaaS type things. Everybody's trying to, get their, we're all at the roulette wheel hoping that like one of these things catches, and, and it's like not.
And actually, when I did Illume, that was like what happened with Illume. Like there's, at first I thought I was behind the times with Illume, and then I realized actually I think I was kind of ahead like of the curve, because it's really like a harness, and the harness concept is starting to become more prevalent now. But I just see so many. Like I missed my moment to like post on Reddit and announce it. It was like, it's not ready yet. Classic founder mistake, right? Of like, okay, this isn't ready. It's not perfect. I'm not going to announce it. And then like by the time I got it to a place where I'm proud of it, there's like a million of them. Like, and I was like, I'm not going to be like another one.
You know what though? It doesn't. You never know. Like I think again, like citing Mitchell Hashimoto mentioning how like Terraform was like the 7th competitor in the same space or something like that, and it ended up winning. And like I think about that too. There's all these things. You think that like the rich text editor was made, and then like Facebook comes out with Lexical, and now I think about, and I've been building a little CMS on the side for one of our other shows, and I'm building like a markdown editor. And it was surprising to me how none of the existing things have the wrinkle that I'm thinking of or looking for.
The exact niche, yeah.
And you just don't know. You just don't know. Sometimes you got to build, like, who thought another IDE was needed? And then Zed is actually doing well, like who'd have thought that that we would do another IDE? And, I guess these things come full circle. And sometimes all you need is a tiny little change on an existing thing, and you can get a piece of that market. I don't know.
So we accidentally did an ad for Verizon who don't deserve it. Tell me why you love Zed. Because that's maybe something that does deserve it.
I liked Zed because of the speed. So I liked that I felt it was faster than VS Code, so I started using it. And I had originally used it because it had these pair programming features. That was their original claim to fame. And I thought, this would be fun with my team. But this was pre-AI. And so then I made the switch to Zed, and I have to admit, though, I've kind of gone back to NeoVim entirely. So I've actually...
Wow, you've really gone down the simplicity.
I went backwards because I had never properly learned Vim, and it always just bothered me that I never did this. And so I had switched to Linux, and I was doing the Omachi thing, which had come out from DHH, and I bought the framework, and I said, you know what, I'm going to give NeoVim just a shot. And then agents happened, and I stopped typing, and I didn't need to learn Vim. No, it was. I'm glad I spent the time to do it. It was very uncomfortable at first. I think that there's probably a lot more mastery I could be doing. I'm definitely not doing everything as efficiently as humanly possible on Vim, which is the feeling I can't get over that annoys me about it. Is like, oh wait, there must be a better way to do this. But now I have help.
And like. I wonder if there's I use Whisperflow a lot now. That's another ad. There we go. Random tech ads. Whisperflow is awesome, and Granola. There we go. Like voice in, and then obviously voice to text. Like two products that are awesome. But I wonder if there's like a Whisperflow plugin where I could be like, select to the end of the line.
Yeah.
Give it, basically dictate like Vim commands.
I'll tell you an embarrassing Vim, something that drove me nuts about Vim is, so in Vim, if you copy something from the web, like let's say you copy an API key, come back into Vim and you delete a line and then you paste.
It overwrites the API key. Yeah.
It's pasting the same thing, and you didn't notice because you're like, it's an API key, and so that I would do that, and I'd be like, it's not working. What in God's name is going
Turns
on?
out you just no opt. Yeah, totally. Yeah,
And I just like did not. That drove me nuts for a minute. And then like the auto correct on NeoVim out of the box is tied to the enter key, so like sometimes it would like give a suggestion. I ended up getting, I had to remap my bindings. I did the whole dot files to a git repo and stow, and so I got it all configured now the way I want and synced across all my machines, so I'm super happy about that. But maybe I don't know why it's so funny. Like agents came around, and then I went like backwards and decided I'm going to go learn all this other stuff. And maybe it was just because I was desiring the challenge.
Yeah, I think that's I think that's what it is. I think that that you need the agents can't do absolutely everything for you. Honestly, it's the same reason I ended up putting so much effort into Illume is obviously it was valuable and it helped me, but I just wanted that challenge of solving like a really interesting problem.
Yeah, the problem set elevates. I think that's the thing. Like when we were talking about how I was doing like a rag with my documentation, because anytime anytime I do something agentically that Claude struggled with, I would have it write docs on it. I'd say, okay, now that we did this, I want you to remember it. And learning about doing the RAG database and vectorizing things and the embeddings, there's just there was so much to learn there that I was like, oh, engineering's not boring. It's just, yes, building web pages got boring. It's not boring. It's not, but this is not.
And that's actually why I became a manager. Like honestly, is that I was basically coding for 10 plus years, and I started to do the same things over and over again, and not just CRUD apps, but like just generally flavors. And yes, I was on the front end sometimes. I was mainly back end, but I think it's also why there are so many frameworks on the front end. It's like people just love doing interesting
people
problems.
Get bored.
And so rather than build my own framework on the front end, I decided to start like try to program people instead of programming computers, which I highly do not recommend. But people are forever interesting. Right.
That is very interesting. Yeah, because I feel the same exact way. That even I remember as a part of like the Netflix interview process, there was a take-home project, and it was basically to build this web page, but they wanted you to build it in basically build your own front-end framework. So not using a framework, but you had to use a framework to really complete it properly because you wanted to do it in a declarative manner, right? And I basically took like things that I liked about all the frameworks and kind of built a bit of a framework to render this page, and had so much fun doing it. And I probably was like, man, I would love to have expanded on it. So now and it was interesting because the world doesn't need another front-end framework, but I just enjoyed building it. And it's this, and my business partner sometimes will say to me, is like, well, why? To what end? What's the purpose of that? I go, what was the point of solving the Rubik's Cube? I was like, I could live my whole life and never have, but I was like, it was fun to solve the puzzle. So I think there is an aspect of engineers now, you're still going to want to solve little puzzles. And I don't think LLMs will help you do that, but they won't come up with the inspiration for it. Like you had to come
almost
up with
by definition, they're literally generative based off everything that's come before. And so there's a low chance they're going to come up with something that's truly unique, and it takes the human to do that. Like,
exactly.
And that is I saw something the other day about LLMs taking over design. Like, Google released a new version of, I think, Stitch. Okay. Which is basically, you give it a prompt and it does create a new front end design, like at least front end like generation. And the tagline was, or someone commented, was like, "Oh my god, designers are cooked." And I can think if there's ever by definition one skill that is not going to be cooked, it is like that design skill, because by definition, when AI starts producing all these layouts that look the same. It's happened with the landing sites, right? You go to Illume's landing site, it looks like landing page. It looks the same as every bloody other
yes.
You'll recognize it immediately, right? And it's like when that happens, by definition, humans are going to want to see new ideas and fresh ideas, and that's when like designers and true innovators are going to like come into their own, because that new ways of coding, like the code is hidden. It's not really visible. It's a means to an end. But the design and the product is the end in itself. And so that is never going to be replaced by an AI, because the minute it is, the consumers, the humans, are going to want something new.
That's
Like,
correct.
so, like, and
Sometimes you
assuming
just like
that
it.
humans are the consumers and not other agents. If other agents are the consumers, then yeah, it's great. It's gonna they will just live in
You're
Markdown.
right
But
though. We like to
like,
push the limits,
yeah,
and it's so interesting because I think that a lot of designers kind of worry. And like one of the things I say is, yeah, the thing that you got to get around is your job isn't using Figma anymore. And there was a period of time, I want to say, when I started getting into front end, if you had done like web design in college and you learned HTML and CSS, that was like a part of the job, the front end. And I still know a designer like that he's amazing at CSS. And we talk all the time. And I said, for some reason, there became such a bifurcation where basically UX designers just stopped learning any and all HTML and CSS, and they just like totally worked in these tools and did this handoff.
yeah.
And now I think with AI, I think it's worth designers learning to code, because I think I think you're going to need those tools less and less, like the drag and drop tool. Maybe you'll use it to kind of flesh out your concepts.
Yeah, or fine tune or something. Yeah,
Yeah, but I think that it is very possible now, and I have to be honest, I've fallen out of touch with it, but modern CSS is amazing, and like can do things that like
yeah. You don't need a bunch of JavaScript they used to, right?
that's exactly
Yeah,
right. So I think that now that you have the generative, it can help you punch above your weight. And a lot of what I do, people are like, well, what is the part that I'm struggling with is people are like, well, why can't you, as you know, why can't you hand these things off? I said, because everybody I have is more of a developer and not enough of a designer, or they're totally a designer and not enough of a developer. And what I'm doing is I'm generating the code and I'm tweaking the UX, and I'm generating the code and I'm tweaking the UX, and I'm using it and I'm finding these friction points. And I just came from a background where I wanted to do both, and my career basically recruiters told me, no, we don't. You're not allowed to.
yeah.
You're either a full stack dev
But
or
yeah, yeah. You would, yeah. But now that's just a great product designer, product engineer. Like a
yeah,
great product engineer is going to be like, maybe not like in some of the finer design pieces, but that UX piece of making sure the thing you're building feels great. Like you're like, oh, it feels smooth. The animations are good. The flow is good. That you're not asked to repeat. The order in which you're asked to do things makes sense. Like someone who cares at that level, that's like a good product engineer. And those are the people I found that they go hard on Claude. They go so, because they're like, oh my god, like I get to focus on the beauty of what I'm building, and I don't have to worry about like the nitty gritty. And
exactly.
it's such a good sight to see. It's so fun, like
It's
to
so
do that.
fun. If
Like
that
and
was
so
your
hence
goal,
the addiction.
that was somebody who said that if your goal, if what gave you satisfaction out of your work was the code, you're not having a good time right now. If what gave you
Yeah,
the satisfaction is the
it's the
thing
end
you
result.
produced at the end, you're having an amazing time right now.
100%. And I think, yeah, I think that's actually kind of a sad thing, because for me, I'm definitely falling that latter camp, right? Which is why I have a mild case of like AI psychosis. But the I do feel that there are a lot of people who are great engineers, and they have they're in that former camp, and they've been rewarded for that for many, many years. And now suddenly that thing has been like taken from them.
Yes.
And that must be very tough. Um,
Yeah.
but I'm
And
not. That's not me, and I just can empathize somewhat. But yeah, like it's a tough place to be for sure.
I empathize because I have to say there were some like interview processes over the years that did not work well for me, but I knew people who would crush them, you know,
Hmm.
like the way that the interview was, I want to say around what is it, like 2015 or 2016, it was very, very computer science heavy. It was very
Like
whiteboard
they
heavy. It was
leak code. Yeah,
very lead code heavy. And they you know, in that time period was one of the hardest in my career. And then it started to shift back towards like a little bit more practical, which was better. But now I think it's even shifted even further, where it's like, okay, now every company's sort of like, okay, now we want this product engineer. And there are a lot of us that really, I think, struggled to kind of get ahead in the old world, that now I think that's becoming a bigger and bigger role. I don't know if the big companies have changed the interview process, though. I think you still kind of, I don't
Well,
know.
there's a reason why big companies had even so very recently had a very like comp sci heavy. So like I can't speak for the Googles, but I can talk about Meta. Like I gave hundreds of interviews there, and across whether it be like coding, systems design, or behavioral. Not shocking, I end up settling on behavioral because that's where I got the most satisfaction from. Um, but the they're just very high signal. Like these the leak code style interviews, they're very predictable. Like they're just deterministic. You can really get a lot out of an individual that interview, and then the systems design one is where you really figure out like how senior someone is,
Hmm.
right? And those are good ones. That again, like there's a set. I realized while I was prepping for my Facebook interview on the way in, like that there's like a dance you do, and like
Yeah.
it's then like you just go through the dance, right? And then like behavioral the same, but like all these interviews are very high signal, and when you're running an interview process at scale, like Facebook are, your Meta are, like any of these big tech, you have to have that kind of like high signal, predictable interview process. And
Hmm.
although I do love the practical, like maybe you're pair programming, maybe you're doing like the rubric is much harder to write, right?
Right. You can't scale that. And
You
it's
can't
very
scale
gut.
it.
Yeah.
There's a bit of bias that creeps in, and I think to be the future. Well, now AI in interviews is changing everything, right? So, um, we're designing at Slate. We're designing an interview process. We're about to hire a bunch of people. If you're interested, please reach out. But that's like the designing that coding interview with AI in mind is very tricky, and I'm like, no one has done this right yet. Like
No,
I'm not because anyone's doing it badly or bit. It's just so new and so different. Like,
I
how do you
haven't figured it out
even
myself.
like?
My thought I want to say a month ago was probably still going to do a lot of traditional coding because my assumption is everybody's, first of all, I'm going to see if you're using AI, having an opinion, right? That's what I want to know. But I always kind of go back to this. It's okay to pass on good people. It's not okay to hire bad people. If you can hand code and use AI, you're going to be incredible, right? But if I get into the hand coding part and you can't do that, now I'm taking a bit more of a gamble. Like, okay, I'm expecting AI to fill all these gaps, and even if I'm looking for a good product engineer, I think you should still be able to hand code fairly well. Like that. Know how these code bases work. Know strong like how things work. I mean, what is the event loop? Like, you should be able to understand some of these broad
Mm-hmm.
concepts at the very least. Or if we're coding and you're forgetting some syntax because you've been working in AI, I can detect that, but broadly what you were going to do was correct, right? Like, oh, you forgot the order of the arguments in a reduce function. I can forgive things like that. Like it's,
Yeah,
but
I feel like
you
when
knew
I
how
was
it
coding,
worked.
I did that. That's literally
Yeah,
what you
yeah.
just described. Something I did all the time. I was
Oh,
like,
it's
wait,
like
which one is the initial value? Oh, I
data
didn't know.
first, data last, right? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I can forgive. I understand that those are things that you're going to forget. But now it comes into this. Um, if you can do that, you're probably going to do all right with the AI side. But if you can't do that, it's a gamble. And so that's why I still advise people. I go, you still need to know how to code. You still need to practice this stuff because I think the interview process, even at Anthropic, they're still going to put you on the whiteboard. They may see how you use agents, but they're probably going to want to see a little bit of both, and that you understand what's being written. At
Mm,
the very least, you can really describe and read the code that was being written and say it's doing this and this and this. I didn't understand that. I'm going to dive deeper. That kind of
yeah.
thing.
And well, what's so out of the interviews we just talked about, the coding interview is obviously the one we were just talking about right then, but the systems design one gets even more important, like
Very
because
important.
that is really where you have to like guide the agents, and like you can't. I don't know if I would trust agents, especially at a large scale system, because I don't know if the agents have all the context anyway, right? So I think I'd be much more forgiving on a coding test for people that have been using a lot of AI, right? Like you said, like yeah, sure, they might be rusty here, but I think that I would counteract that with looking for particular strength in like a systems design interview.
I could
Like,
see that
that
too.
Like
because
that's the key part for sure.
that's the part you don't want the agent, because the agent also makes like different assumptions too. In typically assumptions that don't scale very well. Like it's like, oh well, we don't have to worry about this right now, and you're like, actually no, this is going to see a lot of traffic here and there. And um, I definitely, and that was the other piece I was telling you about using Rails, and I'm reading this book on layered design in Rails that I've recommended, because these are things the AI agent isn't recommending, but they're just better practice as code bases grow. And I'm like, okay, well, I want to learn this because I want to be able to guide the agent into the right architecture. And so that's definitely something that I think we're going to be looking for more and more, because as a code base grows and it's growing faster, one of the worst things that ever happened when I was younger is you'd build a code base, and every new change took longer and longer to implement because of all the assumptions, and you weren't very good at decoupling the code and so that inexperience, you don't ever want to go back to that, where now you need agent swarms to undo stuff that was done because you didn't
And
decouple.
you have to, and the interesting thing, I was talking about this with someone yesterday. Like there's always been this, I think, like quite frankly, inaccurate picture of like trade-off between like quality and speed, right? You can either write code really well or you can write it fast. And I think that quite frankly, I've never thought that was particularly true, because if you write code with the right quality, it's going to help you move faster, right? For that exact reason you just talked about. But now with AI, I'm sure you've been using like Claude or Codex or whatever, right? And it's said to you something like, "Oh, um, I recommend we do this, blah blah blah." Like trade-off is that it will duplicate X, Y, Z, and blah blah blah. And like then it gives you another option, which is like the better way is to create a shared component that sits across there. But that's a bigger change or something.
Yeah. It's
That's a
always
bigger
not
change.
recommended. It's
And
lazy. It's so
I'm like,
funny.
what do you mean it's a bigger? It's what you do. Like make the bigger change. You're going to undo this in like the next session anyway. So yeah, like there's definitely like, the AI has changed the game a lot in that quality speed trade off, because the time it takes to do like high quality code is a minute longer than like
Yeah,
the time it takes. But yet in future coding sessions with that same like agent, same technology, like it will be able to understand the higher quality approach much better than the lower quality approach. Like
totally.
it will go way faster, and you won't have to then like teach it a whole new pattern.
Well, the best
So
part is I say my CLI scripts are way better now. They got progress bars. They've got
yeah,
all sorts of cool
docs.
bells and
See, like
whistles.
my admin panels look way better.
Amazing.
Any admin screen I've written looks beautiful. Yeah,
And
like
I'm
all
like, yeah,
the
I want the
things.
logs. I want to be able to look at them. Search and filter those.
Yeah,
Put all that in there.
send me a message on Slack when it build me a Slack integration, like all that
lots
stuff.
of lots of
Yeah,
bells and whistles getting built. It's amazing. I wanted to say time check. We've been
yeah.
going,
We've got.
and
I think we've got to wrap up soon, but this has
we
been
yeah, we can
awesome.
let's wrap, because you have the meeting coming up, and but this was amazing, Adam. I really enjoyed our chat, and we got to do it again. The thing I always ask at the end, though, final recommendation for new engineers coming into the field, what would you recommend them if you had to give them one piece of advice?
Um, stay on the. It depends on who you are, right? If you are very technical in nature, then go very niche, right? If you are one of those people that loves the code and you're doing it for the code and you really love that, then go to a niche area that won't have like a lot of like training data in LLMs, right? So that's like maybe it's embedded, like it's low level stuff, right? That's one aspect, because if you're a product engineer, if you're moving into like building web apps, it's not there. Like that even today, it's hardly there, and it's there just because LLMs are still in their infancy. At some point soon, like the actual like needing to write code to deliver like a web app is going to be like non-existent. I think if you do have a love of product engineering, just focus on the thing you're building, not how you build it, right? And make a ton of mistakes, like learn from them, learn how to use LLMs, learn how to learn from other people who are using them, right? Just don't have any expectation that your ability to write code will be the thing that earns you money. Like the technical skills, that mindset, that can be valuable in the context of a bigger picture, right? Of a building something, right? But the actual code itself, if you're operating in that sphere, is not going to be the thing. And it's very different from 2 years ago, where
It
like
definitely is.
you could command an incredible salary just from being a reasonable software engineer. Like, and
That's the real it's difficult pill, but I think, hopefully we end up on the other side of that.
yeah, we'll get through it.
Say,
The same people have got very valuable skill sets. The mentality is going to be valuable. How you use that skill set will be very different, and I think much more fun.
Cool. I agree. And then finally, any good book recommendations?
Oh, man, yeah, I'm like let me think. Like I did read a great Python ML book. There's a time at Facebook where I managed a machine learning team, and I had to ramp up. It was like Python ML, got it hanging around. Here we go. Introduction to Machine Learning with Python. Like that was a very anyway. I loved that book because it gave me a really solid understanding of ML and like Python. Like the books I would recommend now are just I would recommend reading about like sci-fi dystopia.
Okay.
Just to prepare us for the future.
Get ready for it. I like it. Enter the Matrix. Very, very cool.
Exactly. Yeah, that kind of thing.
And then finally, where can people find you?
Oh, okay. Well, let me think. I'm on I don't say Twitter, I don't X, whatever, but I think Creeger on
I know
a bunch of channels. Like Illume.ai is my thing. Like github.com/acreeger, LinkedIn/in/Adam Creeger. Loads of channels. Obviously, I'm at Slate. Like that's where I spend all my time now. Is running the awesome engineering team there. But yeah, LinkedIn is probably the best place to find me.
Amazing. Well, I'll link all of that in the show notes for everyone. And it was great talking.
Yeah, likewise, a pleasure. Thanks, Mike.